We welcome you to this forum featuring the candidates who are running for Crystal Mayor and Section 1, Ward 3 and 4 City Council. The general election will be held on Tuesday, November 3rd from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. My name is Kathy Pedersen, and I am president of the League of Women Voters Crystal New Hope East Plymouth Robbinsdale. And due to an emergency, I will also be your moderator this evening. I live in the city of Plymouth. The League of Women Voters is proud of its citizen education in our communities and provides these forums to help you make more informed decisions in local elections. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization and views of the candidates are their own. We do not assume responsibility for the contents of the candidates' messages. We are following CDC and Minnesota Department of Health guidelines for public meetings and have adjusted our format to ensure the health and safety of all participants. For that reason, we cannot have our customary audience. Candidates seated at the board table and others are shielded by plexiglass and masks are worn when not speaking. Questions from citizens have been emailed to our League email account and phoned in to our League telephone answer line. So let us begin. This first part of our forum will take place until 7:40 p.m. The two candidates for Mayor of Crystal are, in alphabetical order, Jim Adams and Steve Adams. These candidates are not related. We have asked them to provide an opening statement telling you why they would like to serve as mayor and some qualifications and experience each has for this position. Candidates, there is a timer who will notify you at 1 minute, 30 seconds, and stop intervals. You may finish your sentence after the stop sign, but you cannot begin another. We will begin with Jim Adams. Jim, would you present your opening statement of up to 3 minutes?
Hi, my name is Mayor Jim. I'd like to first thank the League of Minnesota Voters for hosting this event and giving Crystal residents the opportunity to get as much information as possible. I first ran for mayor because I saw that Crystal Council looked a little bit dysfunctional. It was showing up in the headlines, it seemed every other week at that period of time. Our fire department was disbanded. It was dissolved. Council members, when I watched different work sessions, were sometimes asked to keep quiet about what they talked about. Some council members were intimidated, bullied, and shamed. Multiple council members didn't even understand what property taxes were. City services were suffering too. We couldn't get our parks mowed, and the snow plowing was probably the worst in the area. Those who could not afford to be assessed were made to pay more for infrastructure projects than those who could. Crystal residents had enough. I was elected mayor, and I had never been in politics before. I was a firefighter and a construction worker. I'm someone who works in the community and also volunteers in the community. And then things began to change. Work sessions, we started recording them. And people who were silenced started to speak. And for the first time, we experienced members of the council expressing what they believed. And then Crystal citizens decided to make more changes. The next election, there were 3 more young faces elected, and no longer was Crystal City Council controlled by a major party. And changes continued from there. The council started to become functional again. We instituted rules of conduct that got rid of some personal attacks that were occurring. Trust between staff and council was restored. Public Works building was bought with cash while maintaining our financial health. We even at that same time reallocated some of our funding to prepare for future buildings like the police department. We knew we were going to be building a police department. We've planned that, we will be building that next year, and again, with cash. We had an ordinance revised by a city task force. That was truly amazing, done all by citizens. Our parks became a priority, our core services improved, plowing was better, and the parks got mowed. Our staff is excellent and no longer is protecting the city from the city council. Our reserves are strong. We are required by state law to keep 30 to 50% in reserves of our operating budget. We are at 47. We are financially strong. I didn't do this alone. I did it with great council members. I did it with a fantastic staff, and they work together for you. We all work together for you. I'm a trusted leader with experience. I'm asking for your vote. I'm asking for you to vote for Jim, not him.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Steve Adams, would you present your opening statement of up to 3 minutes?
Yes, I'm Steve Adams. I'm running for your next mayor of the City of Crystal. I want to thank the League of Women's Voters also for holding this forum and for the viewers for taking their time to actually pay attention and watch this. I'm actually looking to run for mayor to create an equity for all residents of the City of Crystal, to open to serve its residents without any biases, to create an easy transparency for city government, to promote the Blue Line Rail, and to be brought through Crystal. I'm also looking to promote commercial development within the city and adjust the financial path of the city to mitigate the increased property taxes and water bills we are experiencing. I plan to do better financial planning for the city in doing this without draining our cash reserves. I plan to immediately start taking steps to also reinstate our Human Rights Commission to give our residents a relaxed forum to find the answers to their concerns and navigate their rights. For qualifications, I am an auto body repair business owner. I have been dealing with people for over 30 years. I also have served 3 years on Crystal's Outreach Task Force, which our current mayor disbanded when we pushed for equity. I also have served on another Outreach and Inclusion Task Force, which was opened up to where that is a much more influential area. And I also plan to use the city's tax dollars responsibly. So we want to vote for Steve for Crystal Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Now it's time for questions that reflect the concerns of citizens. We ask the candidates for a 1-minute response. We will begin with Steve Adams, and then we'll go to Jim, and then the second question will start with Jim and go to Steve, okay? All right, your first question is, what would you identify as your top 2 budget priorities for the next 4 years? Please explain. You have up to 1 minute.
First budgetary issue I would address was the increased property taxes. It shows that we have not been properly planning for our infrastructure improvements to where we have to increase them to actually try and cover up the reserves so that they stay at the point they're at. That's not being very financially responsible at all. We have bonding that we can take place, that we can use and utilize to actually get a lower interest rate than what our CDs and our cash reserves actually earn, which is another financially responsible area we're going to address. Our current mayor has said that he's not against assessments, but yet he just approved 10 of them in the past week.
Okay, Jim? What would you identify as your top 2 budget priorities for the next 4 years? Please explain.
First thing, 10 assessments that we passed were driveways that people opted into. So that's something that I had no control of. They did it to themselves for that. $60 million is what it looks like when we cut assessments. We had $60 million. That's what that looks like over 25 years, and that's in today's dollars. That's been adjusted for today's dollars. So what we are doing in Crystal is simply taking assessments and moving them from assessments to 2 places. One is property tax. 2 is onto our utilities. Our utilities are responsible for the infrastructure. Our next street reconstruction projects, the majority of them are going to be 15 to 20 years out. We are planning today for those so that we don't have to use a bank for financing. So that's the number 1 priority, is to get enough saved up for our next street reconstructions, including the infrastructure underneath, the water mains and the sewers.
All right. This question begins with you, Jim. If you are elected, how would you plan to stay connected to resident input and feedback?
We've done a lot of things in terms of promoting residential involvement. Obviously, there are the things during the council meeting. People can come talk at the council at any time. It's called open forum. We also have opportunities if they don't want to be on TV, if they don't want to be in front of people to speak privately with us. Our phone numbers are advertised. We're making sure that that happens. There are also other outreaches. We've improved outreach for any specific projects that occur to make sure that our staff are available, as well as attending the public meetings by, the council members and the mayors will attend those public meetings. So there's a lot of avenues for communications, and there's really no reason why anybody can't have a voice and have it be heard. There are multiple ways of accomplishing that. Just a point of clarification, the Community Outreach Task Force was not disbanded because of equity reasons. Thank you.
All right, Steve, if you are elected, how would you plan to stay connected to resident input and feedback?
First, with opening the Human Rights Commission back up, that would allow a forum for residents to come in that's less intimidating than a council or a chambers meeting. Second of all, the easiest way to do that also is to make sure that things are more easily found on our websites. Our website currently is very cumbersome. And in clarifications on disbanding the Human Rights or the Outreach Commission on account of equity, Mayor Adams was quoted by the Star Tribune of admitting that. Thank you.
All right, we're going to begin with you, Steve, for this question. What policies would you pursue, if any, relating to the Crystal Police Department and its community relations? What ideas do you have, if any, to make the work of the police department and any changes transparent for the residents?
First thing is we have a very good police chief. She does work very well to make sure she's as transparent as possible, and she does a lot to actually make sure that her police officers are very good at outreach themselves so they have a good relationship with the citizens of Crystal. As far as making any changes, those would have to be worked out with our current police chief to see what she has for goals to actually make that happen.
All right, and Jim, what policies would you pursue, if any, relating to the Crystal Police Department and its community relations? And what ideas do you have, if any, to make the work of the police department and any changes transparent for residents?
As far as the police department is concerned, they have a lot of proposals for reform that we're in the process of implementing. We were in process of implementing those and having conversations about that, before the George Floyd issues occurred. So there's definitely room for that. Transparency, we talk about it in our recorded work sessions. That's on our website. That's a normal standard. Now it is anyway, and it was ever since I've been here. As far as reaching out or letting people know, it's a very public thing that we do when we change policy at the council meetings. We have conversations in the work sessions, and that is the ideal avenue for anybody who's interested in keeping up with what the police department is doing policy-wise to find those answers. One more interesting comment. It seems like we're going to be going back and forth about the Community Outreach Task Force. I want people to be aware that there was not one single accurate quote in that Star Tribune related to what I said.
All right, we're going to continue with you, Jim, for the next question. What will you do to support a vibrant economy in your city, both generally and specifically during the COVID-19 pandemic? What measures would you support?
Basically, my financial philosophy is to make things as affordable for everyone as possible. Trying not to send money to unneeded financial sources that come in the form of interest or administration charges. That's been my policy for the last 6 years or 8 years. It's no secret to anyone. That doesn't change in COVID. During COVID, we still need to be very responsible with every dollar. I have always been a good steward of every dollar that we receive from the public and try to get that to be used to its greatest, highest use. We always try to get more out of it. We want to make sure that it's going for our projects, for our materials, for our planning, everything. We don't want to send these funds to a bank and dilute our purchase or our buying power. So that doesn't change during COVID.
Thank you. Steve, what will you do to support a vibrant economy in your city, both generally and specifically during the COVID-19 pandemic? What measures would you support?
One of the measures is there's no one business in the city of Crystal that has the needs identical to every other business in the city of Crystal. One of the ones, and it doesn't cost the city any, is to be flexible on some of the policies. They need to be able to handle the restrictions in their occupancy and be flexible in helping them to take up extra space in their area to make that work. That doesn't cost the city anything, but it does take a little bit of guidance and a little bit of flexibility from its city to allow that to happen.
Okay. Our next question will begin with Steve. As mayor, how will you work with the city commissions and how will you utilize their recommendations? Would you support bringing back a Human Rights Commission or adding a Race and Equity Commission?
To the latter part of that question, yes, I would support that. I've not hidden that at all, and I would support it, as we do want our residents to be able to feel comfortable in having a voice heard for things outside of normal commissions that are going on. Because a lot of our commissions don't address equities and rights. As far as the other commissions, those are supposed to be opened up so that we have the voices of our residents. So their advice should be taken at face value as to what the residents are feeling and needing and wanting out of their city and for support.
All right, Jim, again, as mayor, how will you work with the city commissions and how will you utilize their recommendations? Would you support bringing back a Human Rights Commission or adding a Race and Equity Commission?
You know, I'll be honest, when we had the Human Rights Commission, we had a hard time keeping volunteers on the commission. A council member suggested that we think about eliminating it. Turned out the Human Rights Commission was no longer operating within its charter. It was designed to take the human rights violation complaints. The county and state have, by statute, have taken that over. So we did eliminate that commission. Where we are now in terms of equity, yeah, I imagine we will have some type of commission. Am I ready to do one right now? I think I'd prefer to have a larger community conversation with someone who is well schooled inside of the conversations of equity. We've had some attempts and we've had some facilitators in our community try to do this with our council. It's very difficult to do in a public forum, and I think it's worth the fight to do it again, but I'd like to have it with somebody who's qualified within that, and the outcome of that specific specific public forum will dictate kind of what we want to have.
All right. The question will be coming to you, Jim. Give us your thoughts on the Blue Line extension and what can or should be done in light of the decision in August to stop negotiations with Burlington Northern.
Well, you know, when it comes to the Blue Line, you know, there's an awful lot of different places we could go. The biggest thing that I want, and the biggest thing I think is important for Crystal, is to make sure that our residents are served properly, number one. Number two, make sure that they're served safely. When we went through Hennepin County consultants dealing with the station design, we were too late in the game to have our solutions that were pushed forward from the consultant and from our constituents to be included in the scope of the project. At the end of the day, that pedestrian bridge that would have provided safety at that station location was denied. This is an opportunity for Crystal, regardless of what you think about light rail, for us to actually plan a new station that does take our community and our community's needs into perspective. And I'm looking very forward to being able to have that incorporated into the new scope, if indeed that's the same location.
Okay, thank you. Steve, give us your thoughts on the Blue Line extension and what can or should be done in light of the decision in August to stop negotiations with Burlington Northern.
It was rather disheartening for many residents to actually hear that negotiation break down and be stopped. That doesn't mean that's not the only avenue of being able to extend the Blue Line through Crystal and be able to have it done safely and proportionally. That's probably one of the things where Jim and I both agree on, is it does need to come through Crystal, and Crystal would benefit from it having done here. But that doesn't mean we should step away from the negotiating table through the process.
We are going to begin with you, Steve. How would you strike a balance between short-term and long-term goals in your community? For example, if the city built a new facility, like a police station, what would be the best way to fund that project?
I do believe bonding would be the best way to actually fund that project. Again, as I'd mentioned earlier, bonding is a 75-year low. We haven't seen bonding rates this low since coming out of World War II. CD rates and earning rates for money that's in the bank is nearly triple that. As a business person myself, yes, it always feels nice to say you're debt-free, but in reality, with the money that you have in the bank is making more money than the interest you'd be paying on the loan, it's not financially responsible to not take the loan.
All right. Jim, how would you strike a balance between short-term and long-term goals in your community? Again, for example, if the city built a new facility like a police station, what would be the best way to fund that project?
Well, that would be a short-term goal at this point. We have the cash to do it. We're going to use cash. When it comes to planning these things, it's no secret to anybody that I try to promote less debt. That gives us a couple of advantages. It gives us the advantage of doing long-term planning, some very good long-term planning, knowing what our expenses are going to be. And it doesn't put us in a situation where we have to use tools in the toolbox to figure out how we're going to finance something. Oftentimes when we have tools in the toolbox, what it means is that we're not going to have the most effective or efficient way to fund it. That's how we got assessments in the first place in the 90s. We didn't have the money to do street reconstruction, so the only source they really had to do was move to assessments. And assessments, from my experience, is if I'm unable to pay my assessment, I'm going to have to put the assessment on my property tax bill. That means interest, administration fees, as well as project fees.
All right, thank you. Jim, we're going to begin with you for this question. What policies would you pursue, if any, related to the issue of affordable housing?
Affordable housing in Crystal is a completely different conversation than what we have in the metro. Crystal is made up of primarily affordable housing, single-family affordable housing. It's called NOAA, naturally occurring affordable housing. We have enough to meet most people's standards, Met Council standards of affordable housing. What we have in Crystal is affordable living, neighborhood atmosphere, and that's something we can preserve. What we've done is we've done an awful lot for affordable housing in terms of bringing up more units in Crystal. These units go towards our Met Council goal to get more density within Crystal. Problem is we're fully developed, and we have to do different things to try to maintain the neighborhoods as they are and still increase our density. So there's not a lot to do in terms of that other than deal with newly developed projects and make sure it's included there.
All right, Steve, what policies would you pursue, if any, related to the issue of affordable housing?
One thing I will admit, Jim is right, we are pretty full right now, and Crystal does have an affordable home buying area. That's what drew me to the city of Crystal myself, was actually I could buy a home for literally about 75% of what it was in a neighboring community. A very comparable home, actually, with actually more square footage. The one thing I would address for more affordable housing is the increasing property tax rates we have. That seems to be contradicting with the affordable housing plan for the city of Crystal. Another thing would be to actually look at some of the housing density in some of the lots. Maybe the homes don't need to be 2,500 square feet. Maybe there's some options where we can make 2 lots with smaller homes for two to 3 bedroom units versus 4 to 5.
Okay, this one is for you, Steve. What are your ideas to increase city revenues and/or decrease city expenses? What city programs would you like to see changed or implemented?
Some of the city programs we have right now, I don't see any need to actually be cutting or eliminating. It's more to be more creative in the financing to actually get our finances in a more responsible fashion. As far as being able to increase revenues for the city of Crystal, having a good economic development plan for commercial space would be in our best interest.
And Jim, what are your ideas to increase city revenues and/or decrease city expenses? What city programs would you like to see changed or implemented?
So I referred to a $60 million revenue decrease. Sometimes people refer to those as tax cuts over the last 25 years by getting rid of assessments. I have done a lot to this date as far as cutting expenses for property taxes. You can't call it a property tax until we increase it the equivalent of $60 million over 25 years. We haven't done that yet. The perception that property taxes have been increased without having any decrease is not true. So when we move these revenue sources from assessments to property tax or to the water bill, we got a lot more room to get back to $60 million. So when it comes to my priority in terms of raising revenue, we will have to raise a little bit of revenue to make up for the huge tax cuts that we have actually implemented. So we're going to continue to move where we get our revenue.
All right, thank you. Well, our time has come to an end for questions, and so now I am going to ask the candidates for a 1-minute closing statement, and we will begin with Steve Adams.
Hi. I've lived in Crystal for nearly 8 years, have witnessed some of Crystal's inequities and irresponsibilities in spending, which has caused increased property tax rates. Regardless of what Jim's saying over 30-some years, no. What I've seen is what's happened in 8 years. That's what many of our residents that have moved here have seen is what's happening recently, not what's happened over the past 30 years. I'm also a successful business owner, and I'll bring a fresh perspective to our council and to the office of mayor to reflect the newer residents that have come into the city. I'm committed to improving equity for all residents and bringing small business to Crystal to create thriving community. I ask you to vote for Steve for Crystal Mayor. I can be reached at steve4crystalmayor.com.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Jim, your closing statement.
Hi. I believe we are a better Crystal today than we were 8 years ago, by far. I want to continue serving Crystal and continue to bring our neighborhoods together. Continue to work on inclusion. We've been working on that for at least 5 years, and equity. And continue to protect our city fiscally. In 2021, we need an experienced leader, one who has demonstrated the ability to lead and to make tough decisions. We are financially strong, and we will build a new police station to serve the citizens of Crystal, and we will do it without giving any money to the banks. Please vote for the experienced leader that Crystal needs. Vote for Jim for Crystal Mayor. For more information, go to reelectjimadams.com. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates for Mayor of Crystal. And now we will have a brief pause for the seating of the candidates for Section 1 Crystal City Council